So indeed, if we kind of look at one by one at the challenges and then how systems mapping can help. So systems mapping really allows us to visualize the relationships and structures within complex systems. So we don't have to make something so loopy and nested into something linear, but we can visualize that structure directly. It also helps us to actually connect all of these different perspectives. And yeah, in some cases there will be overlap. We are looking at the same thing just from a different angle. And in other cases, it's also just that different people are able to see different parts of the system. And by mapping it and bringing it all together in one place, yeah, it really enables the people within the system to see all of these perspectives and aspects, and from there better understand, okay, how does my part of the system that I can see, how does that connect to the other areas? And yeah, finally, also for the differences in goals, it makes it easier to visualize how are these goals actually related to each other. Do they interfere with each other? Do they support each other? And from there, it becomes easier to really have a discussion about that together. And taking like a little bit of a step back, talking about, okay, what actually is a systems map? There's actually no consensus on one correct definition of what a systems map is within kind of the systems mapping community. So my own working definition is that a systems map is a visualization that helps us to think about how a system would react to changes in its structure or the level of variables. And yeah, that is definitely quite a broad definition. So many different types of visualizations are possible. But in general, we want to get an overview of, okay, what are the components of the system? What is it built up of? What are the interactions between these components? And overall, in what behavior of the system does that result? And I also mentioned before this aspect of systems being nested. So if we talk about a component within a system, we can always zoom in and break one component down into multiple components, or zoom out and group components together into groups. And then kind of simplifying it even further, I know many of the people here today are part of the system innovation community, so they might be more familiar with these concepts, but some might also be new. So to really go back to basics, what is actually a system? So the definition I like to use is that anytime components interact with each other in a way that results in a behavior that is greater than the sum of the parts, they form a system. And there is kind of a more simple check that you can use if you are wondering, you're looking at something and wondering, okay, is this a system or not? So you can ask yourself, if I were to cut this in half, do I end up with two of kind of the same thing? Or do I now have something different or something that doesn't work anymore? So you can just, if you come to this slide with your mouse pointers, we can have a quick vote. So for example, if we talk about a pile of sand, do you think that is not a system, or do you think that is a system? See, some of you are here. Yes, we have some not a system votes. Indeed, if you divide a pile of sand into two, you now just have two piles of sand. But if you're looking at a cow, for example, if you cut that living cow in half, yeah, now this cow is not going to have the same behavior anymore. So these parts need to be together in order to show that kind of behavior. Equally, you can also think about a family. If you split up that family, yeah, it will not have the same behavior anymore. But again, if you just look at a piece of paper, you rip a piece of paper in half, now you have two pieces of paper that you can still use in a very similar way. And another important kind of concept when we are talking about systems, maps in general, are variables. We will be talking a lot about variables and about how these variables are connected to each other, how they influence each other. So really simply said, variables are things that can increase or decrease over time. So you will often hear words used such as we are looking at the level of something, the numbers of something, the intensity, the accessibility to, the quality of, all of these kind of qualifying adjectives. So again, similar quick exercise here to look at this concept. If we look at just the word trees, do you think that is a variable? So yeah, indeed, if we just talk about trees, that is not very specific yet. But if we say, for example, number of trees, then we are talking about a variable. The same as if we're just saying food, it's not very clear. But if we say tastiness of food, then that is indeed a variable. So these are things to keep in mind when we're working on a systems map on a basic level. So often when we start working on a map, we might just kind of start with a more broad brainstorm, collecting all kind of ideas and aspects. But from there, we want to start to make things more specific and think about, okay, what types of information do we have here? If we want to look at variables, it's good to ask ourselves, okay, well, what about this idea matters in the context of the challenge that we're looking at? So for example, we have a feeling, okay, company culture, that's somehow important in this context. But okay, what about it specifically? Maybe in some cases, we will be talking about the inclusiveness of company culture. And then last kind of introduction will also help you later better understand the systems maps you will be looking at. When we're talking about variables, we want to understand how do these variables all influence each other. And the two most common ways that they can influence each other is that either when one variable increases, the other variable moves in the same direction, or when one variable changes, the other one actually moves in the opposite direction. And then from there, they can also form loops and more complicated behaviors start to happen. So then getting a little bit more into the details of systems mapping, what can we actually use this method for? How, what kind of communication and other purposes are we using it for? So systems mapping is a very flexible method that can really be applied in many different contexts and for many different applications. But the four kind of most common application types I can think of so far, you can have a look at here. So the first one is the most typical one, is all about interventions. So we have complex systems that we are dealing with, and we want to find places and ways to intervene to change the system in a desired direction. Sometimes we might also be looking at impact assessment. So we know that there is a certain change that is going to happen, but we want to better understand, okay, how is the system going to react to this? We can also use systems maps to help us coordinate tasks that we want to carry out together as a group of people, to get a better understanding of resource flows within a complex system, and to make sure that the tasks we are doing are really reinforcing each other. And then finally, more kind of pure communication. We might have to really communicate to others, okay, what is this complex system all about? What are the actions that we want to take here? And how can we bring these people on board to take these actions together? And yeah, you will see often all of these things will be needed within a project. At the beginning, we might look at, okay, what kind of interventions are needed here? But then from there, we of course also need to think about, okay, if this is an intervention we do, if this is a change we implement in the system, how is the system going to react? So kind of impact assessment level. And then finally, we want to actually take action together on different levels. So we need to coordinate that. So here also the system map can help us to make that happen. And of course, yeah, we need to communicate with people and each other all the way. Then having a look a bit at what does the systems mapping process actually look like. So here I identify kind of 4 key activities. So always starting with more clearly defining the purpose of a systems mapping project. What do we want to achieve together? From there, we start to really gather a lot of information. We then have to structure that information. And finally, we will come to the point where we can draw conclusions and plan actions together. But you already see that this is, of course, not a simple 4-step process, but there will be many iterative loops and between these steps. So once we have gathered information, we will probably come back and check in with our purpose. Okay, is this really what we want to achieve here? Is this the most important thing? And kind of redefine and reclarify the purpose. We will always kind of move back and forth between gathering information, structuring the information that we have, figuring out, okay, where are we still missing information? And from there, going out to search for more information to kind of fill in the gaps. So yeah, looping between these core activities. And yeah, you see in the center, throughout all of these steps, we will work and use the systems map to support the communication that is needed throughout the step. And really the purpose of the systems map itself, the goal, the outcome is never the product, the map itself, but it's all about the discussions that are being supported by the systems map along the way. So the systems map is really there as a tool to help us as a guide and as a framework for communication and to support our thinking. And what the final map looks like is really less important than the richness of the conversations that it allows us to have. Mita, you?
Just wondering, why is the line dotted between draw conclusions and define purpose?
Yeah, in this case, once we have drawn conclusions on our planning actions, what we will usually do is to kind of continue to observe how does the system react. Was our understanding correct? So we need to make adjustments to the systems map that we have. But eventually we might come to the step where we actually want to define a completely new a purpose for a new project, and we have a new goal for that.
Yeah.
Matteo?
Hi, everyone. I have a question about your last statement, Hannah, about the richness of the conversation and how that is. I mean, it could be more useful than the mapping itself. And I wonder if that statement can be reversed, because that statement implies that there is a participatory process, which is always performed in person, and also kind of seems to imply that there is no possibility to create a map of a system unless there is a discussion with professionals of the system or the people who actually run the system. And I'm trying to understand if there is a possibility to map a system digitally, remotely, without having a direct interaction with these people.
Yeah, of course, you can always map a system kind of more on your own by maybe doing research on documentation that is already existing. But if that's going to be effective really depends on what the purpose is of your systems mapping project. So if you really want to change a complex system, you will have to work with the stakeholders of that system. So yeah, what sometimes happens is that individual people get a really deep understanding of one system and maybe build up a map, find solutions that they see this is what needs to be done, and only kind of at the end of their own thinking process share that with other people and kind of say, okay, we now need to do this, but then the support from these other people within the system is not going to be there. They will not have that understanding, and they will not be ready to just like do the conclusion that one person who now understands everything had. Yeah, Claudia?
Yeah, I think it's an end. I think people in systems tend to talk or, and I think systems are end. And so what I mean by that is I think you're both right. In other words, if you map, if like I've done maps where I've gone out and I've talked to like tons of people, like really like 60 people, and you do primary research and secondary research. And you take all of that information and put it together, you can put a map that's understandable. And everyone goes, oh, yeah. Now, they might think it should go a different way, but I think the power of what you're saying of participation is when people build the map together, there's more consensus. And so it kind of depends what you're trying to do. I think like what you want to do with the map. Because yeah, I've seen in the past, it was easier to do solo work than it is today. Everyone today needs to like put their hand in it. And when I used to work in the past, it was fine. You could do a monster thing, put it all together and do that. And so I think the ways that people are working is changing, but I think it's an end. You know, what are you trying to do with the map? Like I think you did it really well. Like, what is the map for? But the maps can be for many things. They don't have to be for one. You know, I think that's the challenge with systems. It can be all. Anyways, I'll stop there. But I think,
yeah, no,
I think we try to box things because it's easier for our brains to go linear. It's easier to make something simple. But we live in complexity. In fact, our lives are complexity, and we're just trying to sort it out all the time. Anyways, it's just some thought.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm also
thank you.
yeah, I'm also not saying that's like all the stakeholders need to be involved throughout all the steps of the mapping, but yeah, basically what I'm saying is I think it's important that systems maps are being discussed together.
I just want to clarify. I think what you're saying is so important, because what I found is if you don't include everybody and you're trying to make change, you're trying to do, change and intervention and leverage, whatever words you want to use, then yeah, you're not going to get very far. That's what I've seen. Like, if you don't have the conversations, they're like, well, I don't understand that. So I think you're right from that perspective, right? Because if you go and do the work yourself, and it's your interpretation, even though it could be really excellent. Anyways, I feel like I don't want to talk too long here, but thank you.
No, thank
thanks
you
for the conversation, and thanks for listening. Yeah.
So then, from here we start to think really very practically. So you're imagining you're working on a systems map, you have a systems map. How in practice do you think you could use that map to support communication? What could that look like? So you have shared some more ideas of how does systems mapping help. So it can help us to reach a shared diagnosis of this situation, align our interpretations. You might also use it as a monitoring tool. But in this case, what I meant with that question was really very practically in that moment of dialogue. How can we work with the map? What can that look like? And yeah, there are more kind of dimensions of the different ways of working with maps that we can look at. Here, what I had a look at is how much preparation does it need from kind of the systems mapper involved in the project, and what is the difficulty level for the participants to work with that method. So yeah, for example, we can really let workshop participants create a systems map completely from scratch, work on that together, kind of guide them through the process in a session. Or we could be live mapping a conversation. So that can look like that we have maybe another facilitator that is guiding a dialogue, and while that is happening, the systems mapping is taking notes and already kind of structuring and connecting the ideas that are happening there. And the participants can kind of see that unfolding in front of their eyes and include that in their conversation. Or what I sometimes do is to, if there were maybe interviews or things like that took place before a workshop where we bring stakeholders together, then I will already, based on the interviews, identify, okay, what are key variables that are coming back in all of these interviews, give those to the workshop participants to work with, and let them see the connections that are there. So in this case, we're not starting completely from scratch, but we already have kind of a starting point of variables for them to work with or connect. We can also have kind of a combination of these two to first let the participants think about this a bit for themselves, have them build the first steps of a map, and then share a systems map that might have been created beforehand, and kind of compare and add things based on that. And we can also, for example, use a systems map that has been created before to, together with the group, play through scenarios. So we think about, okay, if this happens, how would the system react? These are just some examples. There's really only our creativity is the limit to how we can work with this. Then if we have kind of beforehand, before we come into a workshop session, prepared a systems map, a first draft of a systems map, we also need to think about, okay, how do we now introduce people to this visualization? So we can, for example, kind of tell the story of the map, revealing elements step by step. Or we can build up the map in layers. So we might have kind of a core flow and then adding details from there. or we might want to zoom into specific aspects or specific loops that we can discuss in more detail. Or also a way that can work is to first have a look at kind of key loops that are present within the map, and then connect these loops to each other. So just some ways to get people familiar with a map, so that then based on that you can continue to work with it, use it as a framework for the conversation that comes after, and together with the group further build upon that draft of the map. And yeah, we have had a look here at the kind of, we want to think about when we prepare such a session, okay, how difficult will this be for the participants? How much do we need to prepare for it? But can you think of any other variables that we might take into account when we are preparing a session like that and deciding, okay, what kind of method do we want to use? What else will be important in that decision making? And I saw someone in the chat was asking, how can we use systems maps outside of a workshop? So in general, I work a lot with Miro boards. They are very nice because you can use them synchronously during a session, also during online sessions. But you can also have people look at them and work on them during their own time. So yeah, I can kind of set up a systems map on the Miro board there, share that with people, and let them comment on that over time, leave their ideas there. I can share more specific questions around the map. And yeah, you can think about different ways to, on the Miro board, introduce people to the map. So a video where you kind of tell the story of the map can be very helpful. Also, again, kind of building up the map step by step, where people can kind of click through a map building up over time with a bit of explanation. And then from there, yeah, having them share their thoughts and ideas.
Hannah, do you mind also like addressing Giselle question? So when we have a company that is resistant to innovation or transformation or identifying places for changes, how can we utilize a map to do that?
Yeah, if there is like strong resistance to kind of system thinking in general, then we really need to start very gently in a way. So I wouldn't begin with like a full systems map and try to talk anyone through that. But maybe just start by discussing one loop of a common pattern that they have observed that is happening within that organization, and to see, yeah, what kind of insights can we gain from there. But this is also a topic in general. How can we kind of introduce people to system thinking that have a certain level of resistance? That we are also with the Amsterdam Hub currently working on a workshop to kind of explore that topic together. So I think that's like a big question in its own. Elena?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that sometimes for people that are skeptical, going through the process of doing a map help them to widen their understanding and their perspective, and then naturally understand the importance of thinking in system without needing to convince them, or they just see. So that's one of the things that I find the most powerful, that it really is an eye opener for participants.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, Ambika?
Yeah, I was just, I mean, piggybacking off of that, I think that's exactly what I just recently did was I used this, I had different key stakeholders in a project, and I actually took each one of them separately through the systems map so that we could become aligned, and that just really helped sort of like show like there's some consensus and some leadership. They can't go back to the systems map. I think it's a little overwhelming to like add and do things on it. But then from there, we came to like our approach, like a list of interview questions, and it came from the systems map. So then they knew our thinking behind why we got to where we got to. So it's a really good, like, to me, like index of how people work.
Yeah. Then let's have a look at the other variables that we might want to consider when we are choosing a method to work with systems maps. Yeah, very practical things like skills with IT. Have people used Miro before? Any cultural factors that are coming in? Do they have any previous experience with mapping? And that can be a benefit, but it can also happen sometimes that a systems mapping attempt in the past didn't go so well, and that causes more resistance. So it's good to be aware of that. Of course, yeah, thinking about the group size that we want to work with, thinking about who are the relevant stakeholders we want to have in the room. If we can make interactive maps, making sure that we have enough psychological safety for people to speak frankly. Yeah, general profile of the audience, and yeah, how do we need to prepare ourselves and maybe also prepare the people that we will be working with. So indeed, yeah, here just a few aspects I was thinking of. Is indeed, yeah, how familiar are people in general with system thinking and systems mapping? How do we support that feeling of ownership from people? What level of depth do we want to get to in that session? So yeah, often if we start kind of completely from scratch in the session, we will probably be able to go less deep than if we already have a bit of a starting point based on previous interviews and other conversations, for example. And also important to think about always is how much of a potential for conflict is there between the stakeholders that we bring together. And are we equipped to handle that as the facilitator? So yeah, my specialty is really in the method of systems mapping itself. So if I see that on the facilitation side, there will be extra challenges, then I always work together with more experienced facilitators to help address those dynamics as well. Then, do you have any other questions for this kind of introduction to communicating with systems maps before we move into the, yeah, looking at the maps of the participants? Yeah, Fernando? Oh, I can't hear you somehow.
Is it better now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah.
So I was wondering, I haven't heard you mention, I mean, you spoke about variables, but you didn't mention some system dynamics components, such as, you know, stocks and other and flows of stocks. So I wonder, and maybe this is too big of a question, like what's the difference between systems dynamics and systems mapping? I don't have that a lot of clarity there. And whether you find it useful to use system dynamics when you're mapping, or if it's too complex to do it. So I just wanted to have more clarity on why you are not mentioning it. mentioning it right now, and when do you use it, or if you ever use it, or
Yeah, so the way that I look at it myself, the system dynamics is one type of systems map. So that's definitely falls under that. So also, yeah, in the systems maps, variables are one type of information that we are looking at. But we're also looking at flows. We are also looking at stakeholders. We're looking at more physical aspects of the system. So yeah, all of these things can be visualized in the systems map. Just today for this introduction, I didn't touch upon that. Then Ali?
Hi, two questions. This addresses using systems maps, but in your experience, when is a system map not appropriate as a tool? And the second is the suggestions here are ways to integrate systems mapping into a workshop format. What's your experience of using systems maps outside of a workshop format?
Okay, so the first question was, when should we maybe not use a
I've
systems map?
posted them in the chat.
Yeah. There needs to be a certain level of urgency of need to change something within the system. Systems mapping is a more challenging and more time-consuming method. So yeah, if there isn't enough urgency or motivation for that kind of approach, then yeah, it is not likely to work. We need to have access to the information that we need. So if that's not the case, that is something that we need to first kind of solve or address. We need to be very aware of, as I mentioned before, the potential for conflict. If conflict is really high, there might be other methods that are first needed to address that, to kind of bring us down slightly more in that emotional level, where we are able again to talk to each other and are more and more open to listen to each other's ideas. So that's some aspects I can think of now. Then the second question, outside of a workshop format. Yeah, so definitely it doesn't always have to be within a larger group. You can use a systems map in a one-on-one conversation with someone. You can use it to kind of support an interview that you might have with someone, to kind of clarify the questions or the context that you are asking. I mentioned a little bit ways to use systems maps, like asynchronously working with different people, for example, using the mirror board. Are there any other contexts that you were thinking of?
So I'm going to start a piece of research now, and one of the outputs of it, well, it sounds like a system map could be useful towards the beginning as we're gathering information to help to sort of input into how we're talking to the different stakeholders that we want to gather information from. It sort of has that feedback there of actually being able to present something visually to them. But then also thinking about at the end of this, we want to produce something that other people will find useful. And at that point, we've got now a sort of a piece that may not be interactive, but is a map and has a context to it. So it sort of exists outside of a one-to-one conversation or a workshop. It's sort of its own thing. So I was just thinking about, there's examples here of how to generate a map, how to use it in a live setting, but it's like, how can it be most useful outside of that, bearing in mind that maps are a snapshot based on a perspective, and therefore, you know, at the end of it, do I just go, right, it's it's had its use. No one else needs to see this. I did put it in the bin, because at this point it's somewhat redundant, or can it kind of live on, and under what caveat?
Yeah, I do think the map can live on, but of course, by giving the context of, okay, this was produced within this time frame, based on the inputs from these people, and these are the insights that we gained from within that process, and definitely I think it is very valuable to kind of share the map that was built up on through that process, to make that accessible to other people, to work with and maybe take it further in their own thinking and projects. So yeah, I do think the map can also be a way to kind of summarize and communicate the insights that have been collected through a project or research like that. Only, being careful and thinking about how do you go about kind of sharing that map, because just giving someone a complex systems map will be tricky for them to understand everything that is going on there without having been part of that process. So the map that you have worked on throughout the process with the people that were part of that will probably look different from the map that you will use to share with everyone outside that wasn't part of that process, because you need to think about what do they not know, and what level of detail do we want to include there. So different purposes of the map will need different ways of visualizing and showing these ideas. Okay, then it is time that we move to the next kind of stage of the event today. And I will ask the 4 participants from the mapping workshop to briefly introduce the maps that they have been working on. And then based on that, all of you here today can choose which of these maps would you like to hear more about. And I will give you the ability to kind of select yourself which breakout room you will go to. Just try to have a bit of a look if there's one that's already very full and another one where there are not so many people. Try to distribute yourself a little bit. Then Mita, would you like to briefly introduce what you have been working on?
Well, can I first say that what you just said about the map and how you distribute and use the map is really, really relevant. In fact, in what I've prepared for today, I have stages of my map. The one you see here is the kind of, it was for today, but I have a simpler one that I kind of stripped back because of that exact reason. How, what does it mean to anyone who hasn't been involved in the process? The context of my map is that I was asked to help with a project. I'm an equine vet, and I was asked to help with a project at our vet school, looking at how to help equine vets and horse owners engage in parasite control programs, because we have a major issue with anthelmintic resistance. Anthelmintics are the drugs you use to control worms in horses, and because of this resistance problem, we're seeing serious cases of clinical disease. So it's in everyone's interest to adopt these new programs, but they have issues, and so we're trying to get everyone on the same page. The part of the project that I'm working on is a education program for vets, and we started with a map at the start of the course, and as the course is progressing, I'm building the map based on people's feedback and assignments, and then we will have a map at the end of the program with another workshop. Hopefully we get participants in that, and we will then hopefully see how people's thinking evolves over the course of the program.
Yeah, Thank you. Then we have the second one, Kyla. Are you here? Maybe Kyla is not here today. Then Ambika, would you like to introduce your map?
Sure. So I'm working on a project right now around the well-being economy, and it's a funded project that basically looks to different interviews and different stakeholders, from like farmers to people in the care economy, and sort of understanding how we can promote an economy that sustains both the planet and people in terms of equity and sustainability. And so there's a lot of factors, and so really the systems map was to be selective about what factors would we look at, what are the parts of this that we're going to investigate further, so that we could take all the key stakeholders and put them together. It's a public-facing project, so you know, the systems map in this regard would actually go onto the website, and it's really basically used as a communication tool for both internal stakeholders as well as to explain what's happening in the economy to external folks.
Thank you. And then we have Hosanna.
Yes, hello, nice to see you. So this was a map that us, some people who cares about animal well-being did. We were very interested to say, okay, what are the interventions that we are doing in the advocacy movement, and what is actually the system that we are trying to work with, because we were focusing on factory farms and how animal well-being is within those and how we can change it to be something better. So we wanted to focus on, okay, what are factory farms? And we started looking at what are the structure of a farm that creates intensive factory farms. So from the farmer's perspective, and then we build it out to also include other aspects. So we got different sectors of the society here. We got the economy and market structure, social norms, some political and environmental aspects. So it's a very brief, very overview map of how the factory farming system is built up from our perspective. So it might be interesting if you want to look at, okay, how are animal advocates thinking? Because this is like our viewpoint of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
And hopefully this can be useful. Yeah. Yeah, in continuing work.
Yeah. Then, yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. You can have a think about which map you would like to join. And then we will come back and I will send you into the breakout rooms. So it's 1:15. Then I'm curious to hear a bit from the 3 groups how that conversation went in the breakout rooms. Maybe Meta, you would like to start to share a bit how that experience was for you? Wait, you are still muted, Meta.
Yeah, I found it really, really valuable. Sorry, I'm in a broom cupboard because I'm at another conference and I had to hide because but anyway, yes, I found it really, really valuable, really good contributions from the people who were with me. They hit on something. I think I mentioned it to you in a message, Hannah, that I'm confused between causal loop diagrams and some other form of diagram. I'm not quite there yet with what I have. And I probably concentrated too much in the early stages, and it's followed through to now on stakeholders rather than stripping away the stakeholder. You know, I boxed people into stakeholder positions or concepts and variables into stakeholder positions very early on, and maybe I should have stepped back from that. That's just something that's come to me. So
yeah. Ambika, how was it for you?
Hopefully great. I mean, I enjoyed talking about it. I don't know how other people in the group felt, but it's always really fun talking about the process and stuff for me.
Yeah. And Rosanna?
It went good. Yeah. Fernando was impressed by my map, so I'm happy about that. No, but it was going good. Yeah.
Would some of the other people like to share something that happened in the group or an insight they had there? Or a question that came up?
Well,
I'm just very delighted to see people doing systems mapping and going out and mapping systems. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And it's so great to see such a big global diverse audience doing this. So I'm so impressed. And thank you for sharing.
Yeah, nice, thank you.
yeah, for me, the biggest insight was that I have been to Ambika's group, that it's not a linear process where you just come up with this great model just from the spot, but you have to muddle through a lot of information and a lot of ambiguities and uncertainties to come up with a rather consistent model that is good to communicate. So I think the process to come to this, let's say, final good looking map is rather messy, and it's
Yes.
good.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, a lot of interesting thinking and insights happen along the way of like working through that messiness. And I saw in the chat someone was also commenting that yeah, the challenge is always to kind of find the balance between addressing all of the complexities and interconnectedness while still creating a map that is readable. So we've probably all seen these very kind of ball of spaghetti looking systems maps where, yeah, everything is crossing each other and it just becomes really, really difficult to read. So, for example, what I do to kind of deal with that a little bit is that I always make kind of multiple versions with multiple levels of details of maps. So I have one more kind of high over map with the main flows, the main interactions, and then the more detailed map, or maybe even 3 stages of detail to step by step kind of unfolds the complexity from there. Any other remarks or questions?
No, I'm always just hesitant by like what I have done and what the map represents. Yeah, who is it representing and what is the value of it? I think it's interesting to reflect on like what is the map actually? Yeah, who is it representing and which part of the system? I think that is interesting to label when you do a map. That maybe I will try to frame it a little bit more to know, because you can really map everything and nothing, but you have made a choice where maybe like you're not even conscious about which choice and which boundaries you're doing. So that I think is interesting to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also what we talk about in the course, always coming back to the question, what am I trying to achieve with this specific map that I'm making? What is the purpose of this map? And then that really defines what is the content and how are we visualizing things. Then, yeah, I would like to just share a little bit if this made you curious to learn more about systems mapping. I have a systems mapping course coming up in spring, in April. So a 5-week course. That's what people presenting today also we're going through. So each person during that course works on their own complex challenge. So during the session, we discussed the theory and practice with certain aspects. And then after each session, you apply that to your own challenge. And then at the beginning of the next session, I give feedback on what you have worked on, and we discuss any further questions that have come up. And yeah, in that way, we work together through the systems mapping process. And yeah, I also offer more one-on-one systems mapping coaching. Yeah, to guide you more individually through like a real project that you're working on that you just need some support with. And yeah, another kind of free event that is coming up soon, where yeah, me and another systems mapper, we will in more detail share some case studies of systems mapping projects that we have worked on and really walk through the process and also kind of compare a little bit the different approaches between the two of us, how we address that, and discuss some questions around that together as well. So, and yeah, also Ali, for example, I see you are kind of more concretely thinking about a potential project where you want to use systems mapping. So with the systems mapping coaching, you're also welcome to just have a first kind of call to explore, okay, is this systems mapping the right thing for the project that you're working on? And then, yeah, we can just brainstorm a bit together where to take it from there. So you're welcome to send me a message for that if you're interested. And yeah, of course, on the Systems Innovation platform, there's also many other resources that you can access around system thinking and systems mapping specifically. Then, yeah, thank you all for joining this session today and discussing this topic together. I'm always happy to see that there is interest from more and more people to learn about this and to figure out, okay, how can we together address this complexity and make these things work. So thank you all for joining me here today. And I wish you all the best with the complexity you will be working on going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Very interesting.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Yeah. Bye.